Good Sunday morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Lions Grid coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Joined today by the OG, the original co-creator of the Lions Grid, Mr. Joe Wilmot. Joe, happy to have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to be on the show. I've been watching every, and I think it's really well done. Excited to see the potential of this show. You've done a wonderful job creating all the setup, professionally done, and I'm happy to do this again.
Hey, yeah, appreciate the kind words there, Joe, and certainly enjoy having you back here. And so, it's week 4 in the NFL. That means that it is time for a Detroit Seattle matchup. The Lions coming in this game 1-2. The Seahawks coming in this game 1-2. Great way for either team to end the first 4 games of the season with a win and finish at that 2-2 mark, 500. Joe, as we start to take a look at some of the keys to this game, let's start with your thoughts about what I think is possibly the most important thing as we head into this week, and that's sort of this. We've seen it previously with the injuries to the offensive line, but this week is going to be a big week for that sort of next man up mentality because we have DeAndre Swift out this week. We have Amon-Ra St. Brown out this week, and even our kicker is out this week. So it's going to be this is a very injured Lions team, but do you think they have the pieces they need to be able to overcome those injuries?
I think it'll give Dan Campbell more on fourth down in the 35-yard plus range to the end zone. It was kind of a hiccup last week, and is going to kick the field goal instead of running middle with Amon-Ra down, or just running the ball with short yard situation, and all effective against Minnesota on the previous play. They but with Amon-Ra and DJ Chalk being out, the kicker being out, and the average like almost 10 yards a catch, kind of unreal that number one, and it's going to be. I'd like to see it at an average about. What I going to take place today, backups getting their time to shine. Forward to seeing Brock Wright stand out from preseason. I don't know if he's good receiving tight end, but I've seen him be good to see on the line as on the line and see TJ Hawk branched off into a kind of, because they're going to have to rely on. I heard Tom Kennedy is off the practice squad, and is that he should get a chance to push to be on the roster full time. These receivers get back. Jamison Williamson, who was a first round pick up to get, but he had all that he suffered against in the college football play. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the role this week. They can get the win. I was listening a little bit to the 97, and they were saying you're still favored in the game. Geno, we get, and I think that he's good bounce back game from all Minnesota. And Jeff, I don't know if they're going with Kurt, with Ifu. I can't say his name. Those are the two replacements. So a lot of things, uh, some people that are going to get normally have time to play. Offensive line, Jonah Jackson is still out, and I want to see the line down football. I heard they should be, but looking to really test the depth chart.
Yeah, it's. I think you hit on a lot of great points there, Joe. And I think so far what we've seen throughout the season, we have seen players rise up. Dan Skipper filling in on the offensive line has been great. He's been steadfast in there. They've been able to play around injuries so far. I think certainly with you look at the two main injuries coming in this week, um, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift, and then being out with DJ Chark as well. The offense has been, I think, the sort of the high point of the Lions, right? They've almost their first two home games, they put up 30 plus points. We're knocking on that 30-point door last week as well at the Vikings, even though they were unable to get there. But still, the offense, I think, is scoring. It's the third highest scoring offense in the league. They're one of the best teams in terms of the yardage they've generated. And so I think that's sort of the worry, I guess, for me is heading in here against the Seahawks. The offense has been sort of has been their sort of the strong point of the team. And then the injuries there are some big ones that could hurt that productivity. But you mentioned bringing in Brock Wright, him coming up and getting some more time to play. I'd love to see TJ Hawkinson also start to, make an appearance. He's been somebody who has been a little quiet on the season. He's been sort of billed as being one of the top tight ends in the NFL. And he really hasn't, the stats don't sort of indicate that. And he's in a contract year as well. So you hope at some point that he's going to start to wake up and put up some highlights here. So a great week to start here against the Seahawks. But it's going to be interesting. I think this line, certainly this is a game coming into this week that I think everybody, even if you were being pretty pessimistic with Geno Smith heading up the Seahawks, I think most people probably took this as a game that the Lions should win heading into it. So I definitely think this is a game the Lions can and should win. But certainly the injuries aren't going to make it any easier. And I think in addition to the offense playing, the offense sort of figuring things out with the replacement players that are going to be in there for this week. I think another big thing is going to be defensively. With the offense struggling, I think that's really what good teams do, right? Like throughout the season, as it sort of ebb and flows and injuries pile up on different sides, right? For good teams, you might rely on the offense for a few games, but then the defense, when the offense is sort of struggling, is supposed to step up. So that's what I'm going to look for this week for the Lions. The first 2 weeks, they did a really good job of getting pressure on to the other team's quarterback. Last week, they didn't do a really good job of pressuring Kirk Cousins. And I think Aiden Hutchinson, he was playing through an injury. I'm not sure how much that's going to be affecting him today. But he went from having, the 3 sacks in the first half against the Commanders to not really doing a whole lot last week against the Vikings. I'm going to look for that defense to, hopefully step things up. And speaking of stepping things up on defense, I talked about it during last week's post-game episode. But I think somebody who has been really a really standout for the Detroit Lions defense so far this year has been Jeff Okudah. He's been playing great. I think if he continues to play at the level he has been, he should be a lock for comeback player of the year. But sort of in that same vein, I talked about how he's been playing well. I think the other thing that's going to be important is those other DBs, Awarie, especially with the injury to Tracy Walker there as the safety. I would want to see some of those other cornerbacks step up because right now Okudah's playing really well. You have the injury at safety to Tracy Walker. I think if we can get Awarie to play a little bit like he was in previous seasons and see the rest of that secondary sort of step up to the challenge, the Lions defense could be really good.
One thing I noticed about the defense is, in the game against, they were able to shut them down for the majority of the first half, get out to a 20 nothing lead.
Yep.
Yeah, and then they kind of let them back intensity. I noticed that against the Eagles, they came out in the hype of Hard Knocks. Their intensity, fundamentally sound complete. Football Minnesota, they're up 14 nothing. They let them score 14 points, and they come back in time. Then they're up by 10 points. Defense has been playing inconsistent, really good, and some, playing not to lose the game instead of playing like going out there and they're having they need to play defense, consistency on defense, and 20 to nothing lead, or when you the Eagles on the first couple drives, up 14 nothing or up by 10. You need to make those key stop up your game and to stop the offense scoring the football, because that's ultimately, I don't care what anybody says, how many points we get. Defense, defense wins, and this day, because last year in the Super Bowl, Matthew Stimby, because he threw a pick late, but luckily his team was able to pick him up and score that touchdown to Cooper Kupp. And defense, you play good defense, you're game.
That's a great point, Joe. And I think one thing that has been certainly one of my key takeaways for the Lions in the past couple of games here has been that need for consistency. Right, to your point, they start out games with a lot of good energy, and I think it applies. Definitely to the defense. I think that's where I've noticed it more. To your point, typically, the first half they come out and have a really good defensive performance, and then that second half there's sort of that letdown. And I'm not sure if that's I don't want to say it's a lack of an effort from the Lions side of things, because Dan Campbell doesn't strike me as the type of coach that's going to let his team come out there and not give their best effort. But it does seem like the opposing teams are able to go in at halftime, make some changes to their game plan, and then it seems like the Lions struggle to respond to that from a defensive perspective, because it's after halftime, that's really when enemy teams start to make their move, and start to see some success offensively. So, I've said I think the way that we're going to be able to tell when the Lions have gone from a team that is going to have shown improvement, which I think they have through these first 3 weeks, shown improvement from last year, to a team that's actually ready to compete for the playoffs, is going to be that consistency, the ability to play good football from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. Here against the Seahawks is certainly, if they can show signs of being able to do that, would be fantastic. But I think that's really going to be when we can tell that the Lions have arrived and are ready to start really challenging for the playoffs consistently, is when they're going to be able as a team to do that, for all 4 quarters, play at a consistent level and execute that way. And so far, we haven't seen that. To your point, we've seen some good quarters, we've seen some bad quarters, and now it's time to try to put all that together for 4 consecutive quarters to get a real convincing win. And I can see here too a comment from Jeffrey Raymond on YouTube saying, "Imagine having Akuda and Slay playing in their prime for us. That would be, if you could have Akuda now that he's showing those shutdown coverage skills, along with Darius Slay, that would be pretty fantastic. That'd be a pretty good 1-2 punch there on the corners."
Yeah, Andre Diggs, who we had during the Matt Patricia era, away. They didn't like his personality and the best, and thought they could get. But Matt Patricia's like you're not like Jalen Ramsey or some of these other players out there. Like, why are you training with them? And it's like back the franchise, wasted by Matt, and departure of Matthew Stafford. Would have traded Matthew Stafford. He won, but these players that organization, we have to do a good job of keeping Kuda, like Hawari, like if TJ Hawkinson has got to keep him, proves it, and then let's keep that wider. Williamson, I think number 2 or the number 1 better than Amon-Ra St. Brown because he hasn't played it down. But just having that break a little bit taller than Amon-Ra should be more of a possession. He's quick. He's even in the days when they had Muhammad Muhammad, Steve Smith, a lot role, the third wide receiver. Muhammad Muhammad was more of a possession. They alternated between combo. I'm looking for a good working DJ Chalk and or Jamison Williams and Brown. There's 2 catches in the first half, and then was like there's had on their team for big money. And I saw a meme the other day. Matthew Stafford is an elite quarterback. Galladay look like an elite wide receiver. Yeah, New York fans are a little bit upset at this year. Just if the thing I did on Madden franchise in 4th season, these young players, a lot of growth potential, and 80 overall players or 85, and I signed them all their deals because basically you're 25 years old, 5-year deal, your 20s, and for the majority of your 20s, all in the prime of their career, so to an average of maybe a little bit of a bonus con, and keep they have a chance to grow together and as more of a team unit. And I'm rambling. I'm sorry. I know it's a business. They want to market the game, believing in Dan as team football. There's no one guy test the team football against Seattle.
Yeah, but I do think you make some good points there, Joe. And certainly as we look to the future of the Lions, I think determining who are those core young guys is in making sure that you are signing them to those long-term deals is going to be important, right? And that's sort of the struggle too. It's you're sort of each year you're bringing in new talent, and you're trying to find that right mix of retaining talent and bringing in new talent so that everything you can be paying. Some of those key pieces can be on their rookie contracts, while some of the other guys are on maybe their second contract, and it is a big balancing act. So it is a difficult thing that Brad Holmes and that front office is going to struggle with. But I think right now we do have a pretty good timing window where we have some of those players now who are just starting to come up for their second contract. We have some interesting pieces that are still on their rookie contract. So, I think this is going to be an important year because we're still sort of evaluating, is Jared Goff that guy moving forward? Is he the QB? Do we think he can take us to the playoffs? And towards that ultimate goal of a Super Bowl. I think for most Lions fans, right, we would take a playoff win to start with. That would be fantastic, and if we can get that, then we can start talking about the Super Bowl. But is Jared Goff that guy, or do they need to try and find somebody in the draft, potentially a young QB to come together with this nucleus of players and really position them? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And of course, I think a lot is going to depend on their ability to do that. Is going to depend on how they finish the season. And so a big part is going to be that record at the end of the year. And so I'll bring us in here. Kickoff is at 1 p.m. today. Again, both teams 1-2. Seattle's on a 2-game losing streak. The Lions obviously coming off last week's loss to the Vikings. Joe, who do you like in this game? Are you going with the Seahawks or the Lions?
I think Dan Campbell polished on his just, and I still down and putting all to make plays. So home has talent as a team, but the Detroit Lions are Lions in this one. I'm gonna 2-2, and they have 2/3 of their victories already in the first 4. Week 6, they have the ball. It really gives them a good next game as well. And going into the bye at 3-2, it gives them healthy. So then the game, if you want to try to win to win and or go to the playoff, I'm looking for the pressure to be on. I'm looking for next man up. If he gets some play time to be a possession receiver and make some plays in today's game.
Yeah, I think I am going with the Lions as well in this game. I think a lot of the same reasons there. I do feel a little so coming into this game, I felt really good in sort of all of my walkthroughs, even my most pessimistic rankings. Finale for the Lions, like trying to grade them really hard, looking at the weeks. The Seahawks were still a team I had them beating, especially with Geno Smith or potentially Drew Lock under center. But I heading into this week with the injuries, I think it's going to be a closer game than I originally thought. Missing Amon-Ra St. Brown, missing DeAndre Swift, having the issue with the kicker. It's going to make things interesting, but I still agree with you. The Lions have looked really good at home. And I think if they can get a win here, to your point, they already, they're finished last season with 3 wins. They're already going to be at 2 through the first quarter of the season. Certainly big improvements there for the Lions. And I think, again, this should be a game they should win. Like this is a Seattle team that hasn't been very good on the season. I think they also have a very favorable schedule this season. And the fact that this game is being played in Detroit and not in Seattle in front of the 12th man is a huge boost for them. Like that's very lucky, because if they had to go to Seattle to play this game, I might be taking the Seahawks in this one, but because the game's at Ford Field, I think I'm hoping they will be able to step up, like you said, do the next man up and get the victory here. I know Dan Campbell's going to be hungry for a win. He's going to be hungry for those kneecaps. I'm going the Lions to improve to 2-2. So we'll see what happens this afternoon. But I'm feeling positive for the Lions. Again, there are some concerns like we talked about, especially on that injury front, but I'm thinking they can get things done here, and looking forward to what should be, regardless, I think it should be a pretty interesting game. It'll be interesting to see who they're sticking Jeff Okudah on, if they're sticking him on DK Metcalf. I'd imagine that's probably where they're going to stick him, because I know Tyler Lockett, he likes to be in the slot. It'll be interesting. And as Jeff points out, 10% of Mel Tucker's $95 million coaching contract will also be traveling with Seattle to Detroit today, as Kenneth Walker will be on the Seahawks sidelines. He hasn't done too much so far in this young season, but certainly last year in college football, getting into those Heisman race, It'll be interesting to see if he can have what sort of appearance he'll have there too for the Lions. I know this is his second week active, so last week he didn't do a whole lot. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets more of an opportunity this week against the Lions. All right. Well, Joe, just want to thank you again for joining today on the Lions Grid. This has been our pregame preview, and me and Joe both here going with the Lions over the Seahawks. Um, we will be coming back to you for a post-game episode. Of course, those are on Monday evenings, and I'll be talking about the takeaways from this game. But hopefully, we'll have good news on Monday and some good takeaways to discuss. And I think both Joe and I mentioned one of the big things we're looking for is a complete game out of the Lions. So if all things go well, maybe that'll be the takeaway on Monday. We saw a complete game, 4 full quarters from the Lions. Fingers crossed that's what we'll see at Ford Field today. Just again, if you want to thank everybody for tuning in, we are coming live to you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. So whatever your viewing preference is, just search for the Lions Grid and you should be able to find the show. Again, we also do shows pre-game on Sunday mornings and post-games Monday afternoon. And in addition to Joe joining us, I know there's been some interest. Mr. Jeffrey Raymond, who's been commenting along with the show today, has expressed interest in potentially joining for some shows. So fantastic thing is with this Restream broadcast software that I have here, it's super easy to add people in, and we can do some different fancy things as we add in more people. You can see we can play around with the layout here. And as we add in more people, of course, they get added in here. So, hopefully we'll continue to see special guests like Joe here, who, again, Joe, thank you for joining and happy to see you here. But throughout the season, we may see some additional faces as well.
I felt
fantastic.
Like I was on around the horn.
Yeah, that could be pretty cool. If I think it's this view right here, if we can get it to the point where we can have, a couple people on here, would definitely be very around the horn feeling, and we can do some cool things. So looking forward to that potential as we progress into the season. So again, thank you, Joe, for contributing. Thank you for everybody who's watching, and we'll catch you during the next episode of the Lions Grid. Have a wonderful afternoon, and go Lions.
Lions.